Okay, good morning to you, and thank you for the invitation. My name is Frank Jones III. I'm a fourth generation Washingtonian, born here at Georgetown Hospital. I went to high school, I went to public school completely throughout high school until I joined the military. Joined the military and went to Europe, came back, and got a job here at Walter Reed Army Medical Center. I,
When, when were you born and what schools did you go to and where did you live?
I was born in 1956, and I went to Keene Elementary School, which is right here on Riggs Road. And then I went to Bertie Backus Junior High School, which is on South Dakota Avenue. That's currently UDC now. And then I went to Calvin Coolidge High School, which is right down the street here from Walter Reed.
I'm going to interrupt for 1 second. If you could do me a favor and try not to cross, because that's going to rub the microphone.
Okay.
And I can't hear all the amazing things you get to say.
Gotcha.
Okay.
And what neighborhoods did you live in? Where did you live when you were born or, and grew up? And
I actually lived in Ward 4 the entire time. I lived in Riggs Park, and then I also lived in Northwest DC.
this way?
Yeah, actually on South Dakota Avenue in Northwest DC.
Okay, so we came up to where you joined the military.
Okay, I joined the military. I came back here after the military. Actually got my first job here in the government at the Officers Club, building G76, which is now the actual it was the Malone House, became the Malone House. I worked at the Officers Club until 1986. I started in 1981. After
And what did you do?
I actually was the night manager. At that particular time, the military did not have civilian jobs in that particular job field. Those jobs were basically military jobs. The only jobs that civilians could get were jobs that were actually at a lower level. And then I actually left in 1986 because I could not get any higher in my career. And 1 year later, Congress changed legislation and they civilianized those particular jobs.
And what exactly did you do on the job?
I was a night manager when I started in 1981, where I just ran the business. I ran the Officers Club at night, and I did that until '86. When I came back in '87, when they offered more opportunities, I actually went to school. Where I went to school in Indianapolis, finance school for the military, and then I went to club school in Indianapolis. And then once I was trained, I was brought back, and I actually ran all of the clubs, the NCO club, the Officers Club, catering operation, everything in terms of quality of life programs. I was involved in that.
So what would be your day-to-day duties?
My day-to-day duties was to provide food and beverages and entertainment for everything on the installation. The commanding generals in terms of different events they might have for dignitaries that they would bring here. Also, I provided food and beverage for the patients, the soldiers, and their families
So for the whole,
for the whole installation.
that's an enormous job. What all, that meant you were interviewing food, I don't know, chefs?
Yes, yes, yes.
Suppliers, all of that?
Yeah, at one time, before we started doing a lot of contracting, government went to a lot of contracting later. At one time, I had 70 employees under me, which included the kitchen. We had 2 swimming pools in the Officers Club where we had to have lifeguards. We had night managers, which I started at. We had a lot of waiters and stuff that actually entertained the catering that took place in the installation. And then we also served lunch every day at the Officers Club and at the NCO Club for the soldiers and the civilians that actually worked here.
And how many people would be having lunch every day?
Walter Reed, actually back in those days, because I used to also do the main event. We did that within our whole directorate. We actually did the what we call Organization Day. This is one of the hats that we used to do on Organization Day. Organization Day was a day that we brought in all the civilians, all the military people, and we would celebrate Walter Reed's successes, and everybody would be invited. So to get back to your question, I used to serve anywhere between 4,000 and 5,000 people on that particular day.
On an organization?
At Organization Day.
What, in a normal day?
On a normal day, we might serve maybe 300 or 400 people between lunch, dinner, and night operations.
And did you get to go home at some point?
Well, it was, the great thing about it back in those times, I was married when I was in the military, but later on I was divorced. So when I started working in Walter Reed when I came back, I spend anywhere between 10 and 12 hours a day at work.
And did you live nearby or did you live here?
I actually lived in Silver Spring, but I eventually moved back to DC.
And I noticed in the notes you got married here.
Yes, my second marriage. I actually got married I actually got married in St. Martin's, but it wasn't done in, you had to have the language converted. So I came back to Montgomery County and got married in the court in Montgomery County, and then I actually did the revows in the Rose Garden. And I brought a pastor down, a good friend of mine was a pastor. We did the revows, and then we actually did the reception in the NCO club. So everything was done right here at Walter Reed.
Did you have to handle all the work involved with
Well,
the
no,
reception?
one of the reasons, and it's funny that you would ask, because one of the reasons that I kind of did that, my wife was from New York, and she wanted to have a real big, this was her first marriage. She wanted to have a real big wedding, and we went around, looked at Fort Myers, all the military installations that had large facilities. But I started thinking about that, and I said it was probably better to keep the money right here at Walter Reed rather than go and give the money to someone else. So my managers actually handled the event rather than me handle that particular event.
So, and you mentioned that you've handled food services for patients also?
Yes, to a certain degree. There's an appropriated side too. They had a dining facility in the hospital that actually served civilians and patients as well. Most of your patients either ate there or they didn't normally go out. I served everything other than that, because most of my main business that really kept our operations successful was at night and catering.
And it had to be military. It had to be a military event.
At one time, Walter Reed has been, and I don't know, from the time that I came to Walter Reed was always an open post. So, and what I mean by open post is that you don't have security on the gates, so anybody can drive in. There was a period of time that I worked where I spent a lot of time in the general's office because civilians would come on the installation and you would get fights. And when that would happen, they would want me to, I would go to the general's office and try to explain what happened. And, a lot of times in a military structure, military people tend to tell generals or higher up echelon, they normally tell them what they want to hear. I was always straight and blunt, and I would tell them, if the security didn't start at my door, the security started at the gate. If we couldn't control the gate, quite obviously you wouldn't be able to control my business either.
When you say fights, what kind of
Civilians would come into the club and maybe, fraternize with some of the military women, and then the soldiers might not like that, those kind of things. But I've always explained to the general, any commanding general. I actually served 13 commanders here, and I served 10 presidents, because we always had presidents that come back and forth here because of the wounded warriors. And I would always tell the leadership that whenever you have music, women, and entertainment, you're going to have some incidents. It's just obvious. There's no way you can get around it. So the best thing to do is try to prepare for how do you control it when it happens.
When you say anyone could come in, they could come in and they could go into the club?
Yeah.
I thought somebody said you had to know somebody to go to the club.
Well, you were supposed to, your controls were supposed to be having security on the door where you would ID them. But quite obviously, you would get people on the security gate that knew people, and they would let them in. So you really had no real control of it.
What was, did you meet presidents, or were you just?
No, I never got a chance to direct, because security was always tight. As a matter of fact, most of the time, whenever a president came to Walter Reed would you would have to leave Walter Reed early, or you would not get out of Walter Reed. Once a president or anybody of a high dignitary came on the installation, everything stopped moving. You couldn't move, you couldn't go out. So if the president stayed for 3 hours and you were supposed to leave in 2 hours, you could not leave. You had to stay here.
What if the president were a patient here?
Oh, well, it was quiet. You never knew a lot of times that he was here. The only people that knew were either the doctors, the nurses, and basically security.
And you'd get senators and congressmen?
Oh, yeah. We dignitaries from all over the world, presidents from all over the world. I mentioned to several people before that Walter Reed has been has such a major legacy because of the fact that it wasn't just a hospital. It also did research. I always looked at it as a training ground, because if you can, when you had a commander here at Walter Reed, a commander normally only served maybe 2 years. So that means you were constantly in transition. So even though the mission stayed the same, you still got different philosophies. Where a new general came in, maybe he wanted to change something. So we had to always be flexible. So with being flexible like that, quite obviously, you had to have a strong backbone and be ready for change. You know, and if you were concerned about not basically making change, then you probably would have a problem here at Walter Reed.
What commander to commander?
Example, I remember, and this is just a small example. A lot of people don't know that the military is one of the largest institutions in terms of suicide. And a lot of times when suicide numbers would get higher, sometimes we wouldn't know about the numbers, but there would be a lot of training that took place. So I knew whenever there was a lot of training that took place, regardless of what it was, whether it was racial issues or whatever, normally something probably happened and numbers got higher. And when that happened, we normally started getting a lot more training.
What kind of racial issues occurred when you were here?
Most of the racial issues that occurred, I didn't really see per se, unless you're talking about promotions, people getting stepped over and things like that. You could see situations where some people might have had should have had a better opportunity of getting promoted, and quite obviously you don't really know all the details because you really can't say that. But basically I saw things like that. Now I do know prior to me coming to Walter Reed, there were a big incident here back in the 60s called UBAD. And UBAD got so bad in terms of black people thinking that they were underpaid and weren't getting opportunities, that they actually contacted Walter Fauntroy, who was the congressman at the time. And Walter Fauntroy actually created a march, and they had what they call lockout. And that means when they came up to the gate with all the people, they locked them out so they couldn't get in to create any more havoc. You know, so that I know of that because when I came here in 1981, I came straight from Europe. I was actually stationed in Germany, and I came straight here. And my mom worked here, and she actually retired from Walter Reed as well. And she got me the job here. And I know right after I got the job, I used to hear a lot during those years about UBAD because it was still kind of new. But later on, as the years went by, you never really heard because things got better.
That was actually in the early 70s.
It was in the 70s?
Yeah, someone last night was talking
Okay,
about it, and
okay.
I looked it up this morning.
Okay.
I think like 72 to 75. maybe.
Okay.
So, yeah, so things got better, but incidents would arise.
Occasionally. Yeah, occasionally. I don't think when you have a lot of people working for you and things like that, quite obviously you're supposed to follow the chain of command or whatever's going on. It doesn't necessarily mean that you would agree with everything, but you try to do the best that you can in terms of making sure employees get a fair opportunity. And in doing so, you have to also show them the things that they need to do to basically take advantage of those opportunities. So Walter Reed was a training ground in every way, I think. You know, a lot of people did get a lot of opportunity because I thank God every day that Walter Reed came into my life because, you know, if Walter Reed had not closed, I'd probably still be working here.
So when it closed, was that the end of, you didn't move to the new facility?
No. As a matter of fact, when they bracked us 5 years out, you know, normally when an installation closed, they let you know 5 years out. And when they bracked Walter Reed, when they decided they were going to build it at Bethesda, you had the opportunity to either leave or do whatever you thought would be best for you. And I had already decided at that time that I was going to stay and just see how things went. But I had it in my mind that I probably was going to leave because I was very involved in the community. I had an organization. My high school, I started the first alumni association here, not the first alumni association, but I had the first alumni association here in the District of Columbia that was ever incorporated in the District of Columbia. And our organization this year is 35 years old. So I started that through Walter Reed. The first events that I ever had with that organization was actually in Walter Reed. I did it for 4 years. All the events started at the Officers Club. And then eventually I moved around to the Navy Yard. I always kept it on military grounds because military always offered better pricing. And the organization that I was in was a nonprofit organization. And quite obviously, we raised money for scholarships and things like that, so you want to keep your costs down.
So this is Coolidge Alumni Association.
Yes, ma'am.
And so, so an organization like that or any nonprofit could rent facilities here?
Yeah, at one time, you know, I think you mentioned that earlier, and I didn't respond to it. I think I talked about something else. But at one time, the only time you could use a military installation, you had to be a federal government worker, either military or somewhere in the federal government, or you had to get someone in the federal government to sponsor you. Yeah.
So that was you.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that your mom worked here. Tell me a little bit about her and when she started and what she did. And
Yeah, my mother worked in DOD. She worked for the Navy. She worked for all the military entities. She worked as a kid. I remember her working at Fort McNair for a long time, but she retired from here. She worked her last 10 years here at Walter Reed,
what
and
is
she worked in accounting.
accounting?
Yeah, and it's funny, you know. That's one of the things that I really cherish is because when I was in Europe, my mom was trying to find me a job before I got back home. So she was talking to a lot of different people to try to find me a job. And when I came back, the first interview that I got, I actually got the job because when I came back, I was so hungry to try to work because I've been working. I've been in the military, so I've never not worked. And I remember the personnel. This was non-appropriated funds personnel. They gave my mom 10 applications and said, "Well, tell them to fill out an application and apply for any of these jobs on this list." I filled out all 10 applications, and the personnel lady said, "Any man that can fill out 10 applications in 2 days, I'm gonna make sure he get a job." And I got an interview for the Officers Club night manager job, and I got the job. And I was there I was there for the 6 years until I realized I couldn't move anywhere, and then I left. But they liked my work, so in '87 when legislation changed, they called me and asked me did I want to come back because that opportunity was available.
And that was it.
That was it. I came back in 25 years later. Here I am now. Yeah.
Tell me about some of your most, cherished memories about your time here.
Well, my wedding was a good one because I was able to cut costs and at the same time, I was able to cut costs and still at the same time have a great event. You know what I'm saying? And my wife had never been, my second wife had never been married before, and she wanted, quite obviously she wanted to have a big. So I cut my guest list down majorly because I didn't really feel that I needed to have a wedding again. But anyway, that was one of the great moments. Also, I got a chance to meet a number of people. Colin Powell. Got a chance to meet. I'm trying to think of his name. He was a senator. They named the Rare building that's out at Fort Detrick right now. I think it's still named after him. He was a senator from Hawaii, and they named that because Rare. Huh?
Inouye? No.
That might be. I'm not sure, but I don't know if that. See, once, and that's something to talk a little bit about that. When the Rare building closed here on the installation, they didn't have a Rare that's the research building. They didn't have that building open for a long period of time. And then I guess they were working on legislation of getting the money to reopen it. They reconstructed a building out at Forest Glen, which is now Fort Detrick. That's in the Silver Spring part of Maryland. But when it was still the annex of Walter Reed, they built that research building, and they named it after that senator. And I can't think of his name right now, but very excellent guy,
You met him.
I met him. I've met a lot of people, and it's funny now because, sometimes I can't remember some of the people because it's been so many. But I can tell you, I met some of the Redskins because we used to get a lot of celebrities that I did get a chance to meet Denzel Washington. Actually, Denzel Washington came here. Well, let me tell you something before I tell you what he did. There's an organization that still exists today. There's a guy by the name of Zachary and Elizabeth Fisher. And Zachary and Elizabeth Fisher started the Fisher Houses. They still exist. They're all over the world now, mostly at military installations, Air Force, Army, Navy. They started in the Navy and the Army. And the first house was supposed to be here at Walter Reed. And they had to go through a lot of legislation in order to make that happen because the Army wasn't used to getting contributions of that size because one Fisher House would cost $500,000. So they went through Congress to get the legislation approved, and the first Fisher House was supposed to be here at Walter Reed. Now, Mr. Fisher and his wife, Elizabeth, they lived in New York. They were major. They ran construction companies. They built a lot of stuff in New York. The Trepid, the Trepid, they own that. That's the museum. It's a plane, and it's a museum in New York. It's really huge.
The plane?
Yeah, he took an old plane. I think the plane might be from the '40s, and he restructured it, and now it's a museum, and it's a visiting site in New York. But the first Fisher House that he supposedly did here ended up being the second Fisher House, because once they got the legislation approved, because Mr. Fisher wanted to do this because he felt he was very, very wealthy, and he felt that he would never have had the wealth that he had if soldiers did not preserve it by serving this country and giving him an opportunity to be free. So he wanted to give back. And so the first Fisher House was supposed to be here, Walter Reed, but then he started working on the second one at Bethesda. And what happened was President Bush came in as the president, and what he did, he expedited the construction on Bethesda, so that Bethesda would be the first one to open, and not Walter Reed. So Walter Reed actually became the second Fisher House. But the thing that Mr. Fisher, he really felt a strong feeling for Walter Reed. They ended up having Fisher houses at some places, maybe 2. Walter Reed had 3.
So is Fisher House where family members stay?
Yes.
When they're visiting their
When family members have a situation where they might be dying or whatever, they basically stay there, and it's no cost to them. You know, they bring them here, they stay here, they bring their families with them too.
So they can be with their
Yes, with their loved ones. Now, the point I was making about that, Denzel Washington came here, and he took a tour of Walter Reed, and when they showed him the Fisher House, he said, "How much does one of those cost?" And they told him $500,000. He wrote a check. No, never advertised anything. He wrote a check for one of those houses.
And where did his get built?
I never knew, because Fisher House, when Mr. Fisher first started, he said he was going to build several of the houses. He wasn't going to, do a lot. Now they got him in Germany. They've got him all over the world. And now him and his wife died many years ago. But when they did the Walter Reed one, he flew in on a plane, landed here, and we had a big event. You know, I had a chance to serve him and his wife, get a chance to meet them. I've also had a chance to meet, when we opened the Malone House, we named it after, the Malone House was named after General Malone. And his wife, Rose Malone, we named our dining room. I ran the restaurant. I didn't run the hotel, but I ran the restaurant and the bar operation in the hotel, and I ran all the vending machines. And we named the dining room after General Malone's wife. We called it the Rose Room. And on all the tables, we had fresh roses every day in the dining room as symbolic of Rose Malone.
Any other?
Yeah. The other things was I really got an opportunity to meet when the Malone House first opened. Rose Malone was very close to a lot of the old the former commanding wives. So when we opened the Malone House, Miss Rose Malone wanted to have an event, and when she did, she invited the wives of all of the last surgeon generals, all the surgeon generals of the Army, and we had a chance to cater that event, first class, and they came in, and I got a chance to meet each one of at least the ones that were living. I think it was about 7 of them. We took a lot of pictures. I had pictures and stuff, but I didn't bring them with me, but we had pictures of them, and they really had a great time. They really had a great time. I'm trying to think of...
Where did that take place?
That took place in the Malone House. I'm trying to think of, the mind is a terrible thing when you start getting older. But, I'm trying to think about, you might remember, you might be able to help me. Who was the Secretary of State when we went to, we had something happen in the United States, and he said, "I'm in charge."
Oh.
You remember? But he went out of secession because Secretary of State wasn't next in line.
Well, that was Ed Meese, the Attorney General.
No, it wasn't Ed Meese. It was I can't think of it. The reason why I brought him up, he was a very, very close friend of Zachary Fisher. So every house that we built here, he always came. Oh, he was a military guy. He was a former general. And when something, I'm trying to think, we were having a major catastrophe here in the United States, and he came on TV. He came on TV and said, "I'm in control." Because
I hate to say I can't remember either.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it's sort of at the tip of my
Yeah. But I got a chance to meet him. All these people were very, very nice people. And even though you see one thing, I've always tried to share with people about places like Walter Reed, is that people don't, and I guess it was a major thing that really ties the community piece back to me living here, because at some point in time, the military decided that clubs were not needed anymore because most of the people were doing their socializing outside of the installation. So they put legislation in place. That's when the clubs actually had appropriated dollars, our tax dollars. They took the appropriated dollars away. And they said that if clubs, any of the clubs and things like that, if they were going to survive, they had to survive on their own. So you had to go out and promote your wares, and you had to bring the business in to keep you afloat. So a lot of the major clubs on the major installations, larger ones, they survived. A lot of the small installations did not. Walter Reed was a small installation. And plus, Walter Reed is a hospital. Who comes to a hospital to party? You know what I'm saying? So people come here to see their loved ones. So for years, a lot of my colleagues, when I would go to conferences, and they'd say, "You still at Walter Reed? Y'all still open?" Because they couldn't believe Walter Reed was still open. But the reason why was I lived in the community. So I brought a lot of parties from people that I knew. So that's the reason why we were able to, still be successful.
And they paid.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think even though I had an officers club, when we tore down building G76, that was the old officers club. That's where we built the Malone House. When we tore that down, we still had a membership of about 4,000 or 5,000 people. So that was easy income. So when we were getting ready to get rid of the officers club, I suggested to command to keep the revenue that we build a smaller one, because the officers really didn't patronize it. But if you had an officers club, you could still keep the membership going. So we put the officers club actually in the Walter Reed Inn, which is now the fire department out here on George Avenue now. So we had a very small officers club that sat in there, very nicely done, but very small, because it didn't have a lot of patronage. And we were able to keep the membership. Our membership at that time, we were probably bringing in anywhere between $7,000 and $10,000 a month.
So who could be a member?
Or officers or high-level civilians, officers and high-level civilians. Maybe GS12 and above or something like that, because anything GS9 and above was on the same level of the NCOs, enlisted soldiers.
And you're saying high-level civilians in the entire city? Or
Yeah, in the military. You could be, as long as you worked in the federal government, if you wanted to be a member. But most people, if they worked at Fort Myers, they probably were members at Fort Myers. They wouldn't be a member at Walter Reed. But you had some people that were a member at multiple places because they patronized them.
So it worked out for.
Oh, it worked out very well, and we kept the officers club alive until DPW, Department of Public Works, came in. The command decided to put the Walter Reed Inn under the installation, and they took it from our directorate. And I had conversations about that before, where that's when the Army had a major problem, because that's that Washington Post story that came out when the soldiers were saying they weren't being treated well. And that changed everything. That changed the way VA operated, because they started doing investigations everywhere. And it really turned the military around in a lot of ways. VA at that time, to me, I never, I'm a veteran. I never went to VA because I used to hear a lot about how the services were slow and stuff like that. I don't know if that's true or not, because I never went. But I never went because I heard that was the way it was, so I never went. But now I go to VA now because it's changed so much. It has made a tremendous change.
Could you be treated here?
No, I couldn't be treated because I'm not retired or have a disability.
But when you worked here, you couldn't either?
No, you could if you worked here as a civilian. As a matter of fact, I had that happen. I played. They have a gym here that was called the Wagner Gym. The Wagner Gym was one of the last buildings built here on the installation, and it was named after Colonel Wagner. Colonel Wagner was a lieutenant here, and she left. She came back, and she was a captain here. She left. She came back. Most of the medical people, they go to different places, but they always return to Walter Reed because it's a medical facility. She came back as a light colonel, lieutenant colonel, and when she got promoted to a full bird colonel, they moved her to the Pentagon. She just went to the Pentagon 2 weeks. She had only been there 2 weeks. 9/11 hit. She got killed, and they named the building after her. So I played in a league over there. Used to run the league at 40 and over league, and I played in the league, and I ruptured my Achilles tendon. So I just say that to you. Any civilian that's actually hurt here on the installation, they get free services at Walter Reed, but only to sedate them. Once you're sedated, they release you, and then you go to, your own doctor or whatever. But they sedate you until they can get you to where you can get the services where you normally go.
Other than the officers club and things like, or the clubs,
Mm-hmm.
how much interaction do you think there was with the community? Just say, like, would there be picnics here? I don't know, Memorial Day picnic or Veterans Day different activities that would sort of, ingratiate.
Integrate the two.
Yeah.
Okay. Walter Reed was one of the longest tenured summer programs. That there's a summer program in the district. The mayor's summer program. Yes. And Walter Reed was part of that. I think something like 27 years. And what they would do, this was mostly high school students, and they would bring them here for the summer to work in whatever job, whatever. They would find different departments here on the installation that would decide that they wanted to take kids, and they would bring them in, and they would actually work the entire summer. I used to take. I know a lot of the operations here. They didn't really want kids because they felt they got in the way. So they didn't really want. But a lot of times we had to do it because the command was for it. And I used to take a lot of kids. As a matter of fact, I had an opportunity to have a program with that. I started with a program that started with that. And I took the program and carried it on beyond that. And I've partnered with the school here in D.C. Off of Fort Totten. And that school was a special needs school. So those kids had very low skills. What I did is I got permission from the job operation here, and I started bringing the kids here because mostly they needed a site to basically work for them to try to improve their skill because they had coaches. So they needed a site. So once I found out that they needed that, I brought them here, and they stayed here for about 2 years. Matter of fact, I actually I never take credit of it because it wasn't for those kids. I take credit for it. This is an award that I won back in 1990. This is called the James A. Carroll Award. James A. Carroll was a leader in food and beverage. So all of the clubs throughout the world, Army, Navy, all of them, this award is the top award in the military, well, in the Army. It's the top award in the Army, and it's worldwide. So Walter Reed really took pride in that because normally it's very political. And in order to kind of win that award, first of all, the way you win that award, you got to have the right numbers, the cost of goods, all the things. You got to have all the formula in place. But then it becomes political because a lot of times most of the people that win it, they normally come from a 2 or 3 star command. Where there's a general who's a 3-star general or 2-star. We're a 2-star general. This command here is a 2-star. Most of the people that win it, they come from higher level commands. And so when Walter Reed won it, it was a big deal for me. But I don't take credit for it because the way I was able to keep my costs down is I used those kids to basically do my portion control of my food. You know how when you go to a restaurant and someone might take French fries and they take it by their hand and they drop it in? That's not the same portion all the time. If I got big hands, you got small hands. So I had the kids actually weigh the French fries. Everything was done by weight.
This is the job program?
Yes, yeah.
Kids?
Yeah, I would bring the kids in and we taught them, we trained them, and then they had coaches to teach them how to do it on a regular basis, and we weighed everything.
Is this the kids
From the special needs school. Yeah, the school was called Mamie D. Lee. It was called Mamie D. Lee. Mamie D. Lee, I don't think exists anymore. I think they consolidated, the school system did a lot of consolidation. But Mamie D. Lee was right down the street here. And most of the time, those kids never really got an opportunity unless they had to have a site. If they didn't have a site, they didn't have a place to go. So when we had the summer employment program and they came here, I decided, how can I get them to stay here longer? And I wasn't even thinking about how it could benefit what I was doing. But later on, we worked that out, and it turned out very well for everybody.
So they were weighing painters or
Yes.
something to be.
So then we would put them in the refrigerator. So when our help came in at the night, they would grab it by the bag. So that really, yeah, we did that for years. So those are the things that kept my food costs in line. Where a lot of people's food cost is real high. Because normally in a business, your highest cost is your labor. So I've always, one thing I'm very proud of in terms of working here at Walter Reed, especially in the civilian capacity, is that the installation is known, well, not the installation, I'm gonna say society. Society is known as not really having a lot of good retention. The military tries to really discipline themselves about retention, basically being able to keep people. And the entire time that I was here, I didn't lose any employees in terms of a lot of firing and all of that. I lost employees because they took a better job or they just decided they didn't want to work at Walter Reed again. So I'm proud of that because I think that everyone has an opportunity. Everybody doesn't have the same skill level. So at the same time, as I said earlier, I think Walter Reed was a teaching ground. So just like bringing the special need kids in, we're still teaching. And when you have somebody working with you for a long period of time, what are you doing to try to get them to grow, rather than keeping them doing the same thing? And that's what I think in terms of the work that I did. There were so many opportunities, bartenders. We got so many different jobs that you can do, So and then plus the big thing for me anyway was cross training, trying to cross train. So if a person wasn't in a particular job status, if they were willing to learn another status, when opportunities wasn't available in their job, they could come in and get paid at the other job.
The regular job, summer job program, what did some of those kids do for you?
Well, that's another program. I did start another program years ago when I was coming through high school. There was a program. I never participated, but I knew about it. There was a program years ago that NIH used to do. And NIH every summer used to bring high school kids, same thing Walter Reed did. They used to bring high school kids in and you would work for the summer. And if they liked you in that particular section, every year they would bring you back. I have friends right now that I went to school with that actually transitioned that summer job into the job that they're doing now, and they've been in NIH for 40 years. Wow. So I thought, and this was years later, I didn't do this immediately. I did it when I got in position to be able to have the opportunity to do it. I went and got certified with Montgomery. Montgomery County has a certification volunteer program that they use throughout government, and they use it through the school system. So I took a team of Walter Reed people from here to go out there, and we got certified. And we came back, and I said what I would like to try to do is use the different departments to bring kids in who have an interest in those areas. And when those kids come in, let them work for you for several years, particularly seniors and juniors. Because if they look like they are good at what they do, when they graduate, if they don't go to college, they have another option. So we started doing that. And I was a part of, at Coolidge, I also created well, I didn't create it. There was an organization called Mentors, Inc. But you had to decide whether you wanted to be a part of that. Well, we were one of the first chartered organizations of Mentor, Inc. Well, I became a mentor, but in order to do that, you had to mentor for at least 4 years. And then at the end of that 4 years, Barbara Bush was the one that came in and did the presentation to all of the kids, President Bush's wife. And it was really a great program. My kid at that time, I stuck with him for 4 years. And then when he graduated, I actually got him a job here at Walter Reed. It didn't work out. Didn't work out, but he came here at Walter Reed, and he worked for about a year, 6 months to a year, and it didn't work out for him. But at least the point I'm making is that NIH created a program that I see that is successful, and I thought Walter Reed can do the same thing. So we did create that program, and I think a lot of people did get opportunities out of it.
How did you feel when it was announced that Walter Reed this facility was closing?
Well, it's funny because when it first came about, well, one of the things I've been lucky because of the type of job that I do. So I have an opportunity to get a lot of information early on, because normally part of what I do is part of the planning that they do when you talked about feeding and things like that. So I'm in the meetings where they make some of the decisions. But I remember before they decided to BRAC, they did think about trying to renovate the hospital. They did think about trying to renovate the rear building, and they were going. The Surgeon General's office is in Falls Church, and they were talking about renovating the rear building and making that an administrative building for the Surgeon General and bringing him on campus rather than being in Falls Church. And they were going to renovate the hospital. But what happened is the hospital was going to cost more money to renovate it than it did to build a brand new building.
But you're talking about they would have kept everything moved to Bethesda?
No, it wouldn't have moved to Bethesda. Walter Reed would have stayed here. It wouldn't have closed.
After Bush announced?
No, this was before. This was before. What I'm saying is that before the BRAC came about, before legislation did their approvals and all of that, Walter Reed was trying to find a way to renovate the hospital, bring the Surgeon General here. In other words, bringing the Surgeon General here cut costs because I'm quite sure they're renting in Falls Church. So you bring them here, you renovate a building, you create the office right here on campus. They were trying to consolidate and save money to take it before Congress. Apparently, whatever numbers they took there weren't numbers that Congress wanted to hear, I assume. And what happened was they realized that it was going to be more expensive than it would be to go to Bethesda. Bethesda had a lot of space. They had a lot of space.
Did the Surgeon General go there?
No. You talking about, did he come here?
The Surgeon General.
Did he go to Bethesda? Did he go to Bethesda? No, no.
No, stayed in Falls
No.
Church.
Well, I don't know if he's in Falls Church, but
Oh,
he didn't go there.
Okay.
And I think that was Walter Reed's icing on the cake. We can bring the Surgeon General here. You know, those are some of the things that they thought would make it work. And it's so strange because when I retired, a lot of other people had a chance to retire because when the government BRACs and when they closed, it's the government's responsibility to try to economically save jobs and keep people working. That's the responsibility. But they have to do the best that they can. So that's why normally when you do something like a BRAC, they will try to look at the older employees and try to look at what are their retirement opportunities are. I actually took the buyout. So, they paid me to leave. And they do that to try to make a way for the younger people. So I have a lot of friends that could have taken the buyout and they wanted to stay. So they went to Bethesda and see, a lot of people don't know the military services, they don't get along. When I say they don't get along, they don't hate each other or anything like that. Their philosophies are different. So a lot of people who didn't stay, a lot of people stayed here that went to Bethesda. I started hearing back from, man, they treat us terrible over here, But I always kind of think that if Bethesda had came here and we were here, we would have done the same thing to them. We would have done the same thing. So they got their upper hand. We went to them as opposed to them coming to us. And this is what you get. You know what I'm saying?
Your choice.
But when they bragged, when you asked me that, I knew it was going to happen when they did the BRAC. Once the president did the BRAC. But when they were first talking about it, because I heard about it early on, I said, how they going to close Walter Reed? How they going to close Walter Reed? I couldn't believe it. And I think most people, even after they BRAC'd, I think people thought it wasn't going to happen. I think they thought they were just talking. But once they BRAC'd, I knew it was happening. That's when, to me, you had to start making your plans. Some people, because everybody didn't go to Bethesda. They sent people Fort Belvoir, any place that they could get you in. Personnel start working on trying to get people into jobs so that we didn't lose people. And offering the buyout freed up jobs for a lot of the younger people.
Would you have been moved?
Yeah, I was offered a job. I was offered a job at Fort Belvoir.
Well, that's a long way away.
That's why I didn't go. Well, one of the reasons why I didn't go either, because, and that's another thing. And when I mentioned earlier about my colleagues, I would see my colleagues at conventions and stuff, and they said, Walter Reed still open? Because they couldn't believe it because they wondered how I was making money to stay afloat. And I would be offered jobs to go to Korea, to go to Germany, But I never wanted to do that because I had so much going on here in the community in terms of my nonprofit organization, being able to help kids, throughout the city. I knew that I knew this area, so I mean, I wasn't afraid of the challenge. But sometimes if you got a friend who's close to you and they say, "Come on, work for me, Frank," I'm saying, I don't know, we're friends right now. If working for you is going to be a good thing, So I never thought about leaving. To me, I was once I came home from the military, DC was where I was going to be, and even right now to the day, after the Coolidge alumni, I stepped down. I was president there for a long time. I stepped down after 30 years in 2016. Okay, in 2014, I started an organization, the DC High School Alumni Association. And one of the reasons why I did that is because I had been working with only Coolidge kids because it was a Coolidge Alumni Association. But every summer, I got the summer employment program. So I would bring kids in from all over the city. And that's when that's when it hit me. I need to work with all kids. I don't need to be limited. I mean, Coolidge is my alma mater. I'm going to always do things for Coolidge, always. But when we start looking at our future, we have to look at all kids. We have to give all kids an opportunity because that's the only way America's going to survive. And so I decided that, and then plus with all of the things, the changes that have taken place in the last 10 years or so in terms of schools, charter schools and all of this stuff, it's almost like we're all fighting for the same piece of pie. And I just think we need to find ways to consolidate and work together as opposed to being so competitive. Everything is about who's winning and who's losing. So when I started the DC High School Alumni, my focus was to start working with all of the high schools, particularly the alumni associations, to try to get us all on the same playing field to help each one of our institutions. And I've met with all the schools, not all the schools, but a large majority of the schools in the city I've met with. But, quite obviously, organizations still they don't work for free. You still have to find a way to pay for these things. And they love the idea, they love the concept, but they're not willing to get on board. So what happened, I have been taking kids from Coolidge down to the Dominican with the exchange program. I did that back in 2012. And it was such a big hit that ever since then, I've been working with kids in the Dominican. So I go to the Dominican Republic now. I've been going there for 14 years. And I work with kids down there. And now I found that there's more of a need there. I mean, poverty is, just keep in mind what's been happening recently with Haiti. Because Dominican's right there by Haiti. You know what I'm saying? And you have so much problems globally because the Dominican people don't like the Haitian people. So they use them for labor, but then when they're done with them, they want them gone. So I see all of this, and my thing is I don't care if they're Haitian, I don't care if they're Dominican, I don't care who they are. We need to give all of them an opportunity. So right now, I leave this week to go there because I stay for the whole winter. We actually purchased a building in the Dominican, and what we offer is free housing scholarships. So we've partnered with the largest university in the Dominican. We've partnered with them, and when high school kids apply to go to the university, if they live far away and they can't afford to get to the university, we let them apply for our housing, and they get free housing. The only thing they have to do is feed themselves. Their family has to feed them.
So are you taking DC kids down there anymore? That was
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I'm bringing next year, 2022, will be 10 years. I just reached out. I'm having calls right now. I've been having calls for the last 6 months with we took all they were all ladies, or all young ladies. We took all women that, when we took them in 2012, all of them are doing very well. They all got degrees. A couple of them are married with kids. We're taking them back. My plan is to take them back next year in 2022. Already got the reservation date, but the difference is when we went there before, we actually went into a school in Sosua, which is a city in the Dominican, and we actually taught 450 kids English. And we stayed there for 2 weeks. We created a curriculum that we left with them because we didn't want to just go there, teach them, and leave. So we took a curriculum there, and we left the curriculum with them. So when we left, they could continue to work because we didn't just teach the students; we taught the staff as well. So now we're going back. I'm hoping to take them back now, and we can see the results of our fruit, of our efforts.
awesome.
Yeah.
You have some other things there that
Yeah.
I haven't seen yet, so I want
Yeah.
to take a look at some of those.
Yeah. One of the things is, these are some of the medals. I've gotten a number of medals from different commanders, This is a sergeant major. I got medals from them of a lot of the work that I've done over the years. There's a program with the soldiers called BOSS, and it stands for Better Opportunity for Single Soldiers. The military realized that single soldiers a lot of times have challenges because they're not married, some of them away from their families, so they wanted to create programs that would keep them kind of engaged. So Better Opportunities for Single Soldiers was a major program for the Department of Army, and they did that. And this is the medal that they, what's the name? And I probably failed to mention, you'll see on here, MWR. MWR is us. That's the director that I work for. That stands for Morale, Welfare, and Recreation, which still exists now, but I think they've renamed it now. I think there's a new name for it, but and they work all over the world. They work all over the world. One of the other things is I talked about the kids, the students that I take. When we went to the Dominican and took the students down there, we also had each one of the kids take a lot of pictures while they were there. And when they took their pictures, we consolidated their pictures. And when we came back, we wrote a book. And this was the book. This is the students and the staff that we took down there that actually taught the English while we was there. And the school that we actually taught, this is their staff. This is their staff. And what's name? And so we wrote the conceptual, how it all started, whatever. So now I'm using the same book that I did 12 years ago, and that's created the concept of what I'm actually going to be doing now in terms of exchange programs, because I'm bringing Dominican kids here through the University of District of Columbia, and I'm taking American kids there. So when I go there I leave on this week. When I leave this week, we're going to be doing a conflict resolution workshop. Conflict resolution is something that I think is vital. We've been doing conflict resolution here with the kids in the city. I got my first wind of it in 2009, and I've been doing it every year since.
What is BRAC? Is that an acronym?
Yes, acronym, and believe me.
Base reduction?
Yes, base reduction. You got it. You got it.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's base reduction alignment because you're aligning. You're not getting rid of. Walter Reed still exists. It's just not in D.C.
Okay.
You know, so it's base reduction alignment, and I don't know what the last letter's for. We got close enough. You got two of them. I got one.
And then I see in my notes something about the swimming pool and the dance floor and all of that. Were those all things you managed or
Yeah.
had to maintain?
Yeah. Well, no, I didn't. MWR. I just ran a division in MWR, and my division was actually entitled Business Community Operations Division, and that was, as I mentioned before, catering, anything food and beverage and entertainment, all of that. You know, when you have generals doing major events and they need tables and chairs, to set up, I normally came in and did that. Sometimes they had the military do it, but that was a way of not having the military do that kind of work. But we also had we ran child care. We ran sports programs, all the sports programs. We ran the libraries. Anything, our job in MWR involved everything in terms of quality of life for the military and their families. That was our mission. That's what we did.
So the swimming pool was just.
Yes, it was a part of that. Mm-hmm.
Oh, it was a part of it.
It was a part. Yeah, the swimming pool was a part of MWR, but they took it away from us when they started having the soldiers come in and they had to do the prostheses. They needed space.
Oh, then
So
it became a medic.
yes. Mm-hmm.
And what other, they're like basketball courts and
Yeah, well, the Wagner, when they built the Wagner Center had handball, and they also had a major basketball court in there as well. So that took the place of that, but they didn't have. Now they have other pools here too, therapeutic, but they're in the hospital. But they're not the kind of pools that everybody can go and swim like outside or something like that. We ran that, but they had therapeutic pools and stuff inside the hospital.
once the war started in Iraq, and I guess that must have changed things here, or
Yeah, that's the reason why they took the pool. We started getting a lot more wounded warriors, and once we got a lot of the wounded warriors, they had to make space to basically when they came back here, when they medevaced them here, they had to make arrangements for them to be taken care of. One of the organizations, there's a number of organizations, but I just know this one because they work with us. When they bracked, when we bracked and we started doing things for the soldiers because they had a lot more soldiers here. Famous Dave's, the barbecue place. Famous Dave came in every week and did food stuff for the soldiers every week. I mean, they did this for almost the entire time of the brack. Now, Famous Dave is the same ones that I use for my organization day too. So they always did a good job, but they came in and they felt that they needed to be a part of what was going on. So it's no cost to Walter Reed, no cost to the soldiers. They came in once a week and they did barbecues for the soldiers and their families. You know, so and I'm saying Famous Days because that's who I'm thinking of now. There were a lot of people that came in and were very supportive. I mean, because I'm thinking right now, I still remember, it was like yesterday, I remember 9/11. I was in the NCO club, and I remember seeing the plane go into the building, and I thought it was a movie. And then the second plane went into the building. And I remember it was it was chaos. Nobody knew what to do. Traffic was crazy. I mean, people didn't know what to do. We were lost.
You were watching on TV.
I was watching TV inside the club when it happened. And then that's when one of the soldiers, see, my club was next door to, my club, I think I've mentioned before, maybe I didn't mention it in this segment, but my club was the only club in the Army, Department of Army, where the clubs sit in the billets where the soldiers live. Most of your clubs are independent buildings. They don't and I always thought that was a great thing because if a soldier got too intoxicated, he could just struggle up the stairs and no harm to anybody. He had to worry about DWIs, any of that kind of thing. So I thought that was a great thing. But I remember one of the also sections next to us in terms of billeting was a section called Medical Hold. Medical Hold was where all the soldiers that come here to basically go before the doctors to find out if they're going to get a disability. You have to go before a board to determine what their disability is going to be. Those soldiers would be very...
Well, besides the horn and that.
The light is.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, the thing about Medical Hold was that a lot of people, I never talked about this a lot because it was something that I didn't think I wanted to highlight. But Medical Hold was a place where they kept the soldiers until they made a determination of their disability, how they were going to get out of the military. And it became a fight between the doctor's assessment and what the soldier felt they should be getting based on their injuries. So by them living right next to the club, they would come to the club and just drink. I mean, quite obviously, I'm in the business to make money, but it really wasn't a great situation because we had to be responsible in serving them and not make sure they were too intoxicated. But they would come every day because they were so, disappointed in what was going on in terms of, whatever their situations were. And sometimes I would be there and hear them talking about it and things like that. And I would try to stay away from it. Not because I just didn't want to be in the middle of whatever, because, there's always two sides to a story. And quite obviously, I tend to believe the one, if someone's got one arm and one leg, I kind of tend to believe more what they're saying. But there still is another side. So a lot of times I tried to stay away from it, but I did have staff that would confront me, and talk like it became our responsibility, and I would try to remind them that our job is just to service them when they come into the club. But it really was a very delicate situation to deal with on a day-to-day basis because Medical Hold was there the entire time. It never went away. So those were some of the things that you had to deal with. You had to deal with also, but no, I think that Walter Reed was a great place for a lot of people. One of the things when I mentioned my community involvement is that I became a commissioner after I left Walter Reed. I didn't only do the work with the nonprofit organization. My high school, the school system was basically really making a change in the city, and with all the charter schools and all those things coming up. And they were talking about closing there's only two high schools in Ward 4. That's Roosevelt and that's Coolidge. And they were talking about closing one. They didn't feel they needed two high schools because all these charter schools are coming up too. So when that discussion came on board, quite obviously, I'm the president of the Alumni Association. I needed to fight that situation. So I was on several boards after I left Walter Reed. I was on the board for Safe Tacoma. I was on the board for that. I was on the board for the Georgia Avenue Collaborative. I was also on the Georgia Avenue Council. The Georgia Avenue Council. Every ward has a collaborative, and Georgia Avenue is this area's collaborative. I was on this collaborative, but I was also on the council, which represented all of the collaboratives in the city. So I was on the collaborative board, and then I became commissioner, which is an elected position. Yeah, I was ANC commissioner. I had no interest in that. Quite obviously, when we had our gathering recently, Faith Willer was a commissioner for, I think, almost 12 years or something like that. Faith is one of the co-founders of Safe Tacoma Inc. And Faith came to me. Matter of fact, Faith came. I'll show you this. When I retired, because I was a Carroll Award winner, and then plus, Walter Reed being what it is, the Department of Army had a magazine called the International Military Community Executives. That was all of your club managers all over the world. The magazine is called Connection. They did a retirement story on me. And when they did the story, when I had my retirement, I invited a lot of people. And I knew Faith, but I didn't know her very well. And I still remember my retirement. They did like a roast. Some people coming up just talking about, the things I've done to help them or whatever. And Faith came up and said, "Don't worry about Frank Jones. We got plans for him." And I eventually became a board member of Safe Tacoma, and then I eventually became interim president of Safe Tacoma. But no, I stayed engaged in the community. And when I found out they were talking about closing Coolidge, Faith actually came to me and she wanted to step down as commissioner. And she said, you need to run for commissioner. I said, Faith, I'm not into politics. I have no interest in it. But I had always told Faith when we used to talk, I said, the best way to do multiple jobs, because, quite obvious, my job involved me running multiple things. I've been trained to do that. I said, you should always try to find a mission that ties all those things in, and then you can be doing the same thing, right? And I told Faith that. When Faith came back and told me, she said, you remember you said that whenever you can centralize, she said, they're trying to close Coolidge. You're the president of the alumni. She said, just imagine if you're a commissioner too. She said, now you got two hats at the table. So I thought about it when she said it. I said, that makes sense. But then I said, she's using my stuff on me. And Faith got me. So she told me, because I was going to the Dominican then, and I would be gone for that long period of time. And I always went to the Dominican. I was gone in February and November every year. Remember, February and November, I tell people all the time, February and November they're the two busiest times in the country. In February, that's Super Bowl. I'm going for the Super Bowl. That's the largest event in the country. In November, elections. I'm gone both periods. So I'm away from all the drama. You know what I'm saying? So I told Faith, I said, Faith, how can I run for office in November? I'm gone. Faith said, don't worry about it. I'll take care of everything. She said, all you got to do is walk the community. The only thing you have to do, I have to walk the community and campaign. She said, if you can just walk the community with me and I'll introduce you, she said, we can do that. I went. So I had no interest. I didn't really have any interest in it, but I did want, whatever it took to save Coolidge, I was willing to do. And I still remember I was in the Dominican, and the people, I had a number of people with me down there, and they were keeping an eye, because this was in 2015. So that's the same year that Muriel Bowser left City Council. She was our council member for Ward 4. She ran for mayor against Vincent Gray. So that was the same year. So she won. So the same year I wanted to come in as a commissioner was the same year that Muriel came in as mayor. And I still remember being in the Dominican. I wasn't interested. I was trying to take care of all my people that I had taken down there on the trip. And I remember a guy by the name of, he's a good friend of mine named Terry Goins. Terry, he's very close to the mayor. And Terry said, oh, the mayor, Muriel won. He said, guess what, y'all? He was telling the guests. I didn't tell nobody there that I was running for anything, because I'm in the Dominican. He said, Frank just won the election by 56%. And that kind of blew my, I said, what are you telling these people? We down here trying to vacation. He keep an eye not on her, he keep an eye on me too. And so, I did, but I shared with them, one of the things I shared, and because I told Faith this too. I said, Faith, if I run, I said, I'm only doing the one term. It's a 2-year term. I said, I'm only doing the term. I said, because I'm only doing it to try to keep Coolidge open, whatever I can do to keep Coolidge and Roosevelt open. That's what I'm doing. And quite obviously, both of the schools got modernized and they're still open. So it worked out very well.
And
I stayed one term. One of the things that when you come on to the commission, whoever the chair is, they normally sit commissioners down and they ask them, why did you run? What is your goal? And I was very, very precise. I said, well, to tell you the truth, I said, I only ran because I'm trying to keep Coolidge open. So I'm just being honest with you, and I'm only going to do one term. I said, and the reason why I'm here is because of Faith Willer. I said, so I'm here specifically to do that. But I do understand there's a lot of other responsibility that comes with me raising my hand. I said, so I'm willing to do all the other work that comes along with the territory. You know what I mean? But I just want you to know where my focus is. And so, and I did a number of pieces of legislation that I think was very helpful in keeping the school open. And but the one term was all I was going to do.
okay.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned in the community meeting something about when Walter Reed was closing, tables and chairs or equipment or something that
Yes.
you got donated to.
Yes, yes. By us being non-appropriated, our property, all the property that we own, is not handled in the same way appropriated property is handled. So we can decide on how we want to dispense of that property. And so I went to our director and I told him, I said, we've been in this community, doing all the things we've been doing, but it's really been about our Walter Reed family. I said, now we've done a number of things for the community too, but now this is going to be our last deal, our last hurrah. I said, so, what do we do with a lot of this equipment? I said, if there's things that you think that we can get rid of that you would allow, I said, I can check with some other schools in the city and find out what their needs are. And if we can do that, I said, particularly Coolidge, because Coolidge is the closest school to Walter Reed. So he told me anything that I had that I thought that a school could use. He said that my boss's name was Craig Miller. He said that we should go ahead and see how we can help. So, we ended up giving them a lot of tables, chairs, sports equipment, basketballs, baseballs, baseball bags and stuff for the bases. We gave them a lot of stuff. Matter of fact, I had bought a storage shed. The Amish community makes buildings. I don't know if you know, they make buildings. I had bought an Amish building and I used that as a storage out at Forest Glen because I didn't have a building in Forest Glen. So whenever we had events out there, I wanted to have tables and stuff readily available out there. So I bought this storage and stored a lot of our tables out there so we didn't have to keep transporting them. That storage was going to be eventually torn down and it was still in great shape. So he told me I could get that too. So I got one of those wide, the wide trucks that carry them. And I got the organization though to pay for that. They paid for the truck to transport it. But matter of fact, the building is still there. Coolidge modernized everything, but that building still sits there right now today, so. But they use that to store a lot of their things like tables and stuff too, So, but we gave them quite a bit of stuff to help them.
Did it just go to Coolidge or did it go to other schools?
No, it just went to Coolidge. But what did happen after because we did most of the stuff that we did with Coolidge at that time, I was still trying to do our alumni fundraisers, and a lot of times we didn't have tables to do it at the school. We had to go to Navy Yard, Walter Reed. I was trying to create a long-term situation by having tables and chairs where we wouldn't have to rent them. So that's why the tables and chairs were vital. The other stuff, the sports stuff, were just the other things. But in terms of the rest of the city, I connected with the ROTC program in Coolidge, and he put the word out to all the other ROTC programs. This was after BRAC, though. After BRAC was over, the hospital actually had furniture throughout, but nobody could come in. So I put them in touch with our ROTC commander, and he reached out to the other schools. And the people that were running it, the contractors, they allowed all the schools, well, when I say all, I don't know what schools, but they allowed a lot of the schools to come in and pick through the furniture. So whatever they wanted, they gave them. And that was from the hospital. The stuff I'm talking about was from our director. It wasn't from the hospital. The hospital had a lot more stuff.
But you were instrumental in getting that.
Yeah, because I talked to our ROTC program, and they were a part of getting stuff from the building. So he shared that when he met them, they told him, I didn't tell them what they can do because I really didn't know, but I knew I could get them in. Once I got them in, they basically made the arrangement to get other schools in, and the other schools were able to benefit from that too.
Okay, then one last thing, big question. So there's something about Dunkin' Donuts and,
Yeah. For years, I think I started out early and I was saying that I had maybe 70 employees under me because I ran a number of facilities. And then I talked also a little bit about retention, not losing people, because you're just firing them and things like that. And when we actually got BRAC, I think I had 10 people that were still with me for at least 20 years of my 30 years. And they all retired too. But one of the things that I was able to do in terms of keeping the retention and not losing people is that a lot of times when you're not making money, you got to find ways to retain the jobs. As I mentioned, labor is your highest cost. How do you continue to retain the labor, but at the same time bring in enough income to cover that cost? One of the things I constantly talk to the leadership about, I told them this was long before businesses and stuff started contracting. I mean, they did contract, and I'm not trying to sit here and say I started contracting because I didn't. But what I'm saying is that in our business, we didn't do that because if you really wanted to have a large staff, and some people they like to have a lot of people under them. If you want to have a large staff, why would you contract? You're not going to contract because you lose people. But I always felt that you could contract, provide a more quality service, and move your people around to do other things, even if it means giving them opportunities in management and stuff like that. Because if they've been doing something for 20 years, they know it. They frontline managers, they frontline people. So now they can really, be able to tell you how it's done. Because I always thought, because I started in management, but I had an opportunity to deal with the frontline people. And a lot of times, leadership never listened to the people that's actually doing the work. And I always felt that if you really listen to the people that's doing the work, you probably have better results. So in terms of over the years, I had constantly been talking to them about contracting out, and they never wanted to do it. And then finally, after BRAC started, I think right around the time they BRAC, they agreed with me. But the only reason they did, we actually went to the Department of Army's headquarters, and they came in and did a whole community assessment of what they thought the direction would be. And they came back and said they think Mr. Jones is right, contract will be good. Because we had a lot of businesses up here on Georgia Avenue at the time too that were taken away from what we did. So, and then you still had Forest Glen, you had, I think I mentioned the AFES. AFES is not a part of us. They're opposite of us. AFES is who runs the Burger Kings and things like that. We didn't do that.
what is AFES?
AFES is Army Air Force exchange. They're the ones that run around the all the services. When you go to places and you see gas stations and stuff like that, that's all normally under AFES.
Gas stations on bases.
That's AFES. Any Burger Kings and all of that, all that's under AFES. They have a contract to do that worldwide. So we kind of compete with each for the same services somewhat, but we do a lot more than them. But we compete for some of the same services. So I got them to talk. I got them to do the contracting, and my staff has started. After you BRAC, people start leaving because they know not going to be around long. So what I did is when I got them to finally contract, we headquarters helped us to put a RFP together, and when we did that, we actually got 2 businesses running the business I used to run. I used to run a little small coffee shop in the hospital, and then there was a space right outside of that there was nothing. They actually built a Dunkin' Donuts right there in that space where it was adjacent to the shop that I had. So you had Dunkin' Donut, and then the other concept that they brought in was Subway. So you had a Subway and a Dunkin' Donuts. Both of them were under the same ownership, and they were making anywhere between $100,000 and $125,000 a month. And who would think that kind of money's there? Yeah, we get 10. Whatever they did, we get 10%. We get 10%.
You didn't do anything.
You didn't do anything. I just signed the documents and did the paperwork. And then I was able to take the rest of my team and implement them in different spots that would, make things a smooth process. You know what I mean? So the people that I still had, they still had a job, and we didn't lose anybody. So it really worked out well. But I said to myself, I said, all these years, I've been struggling to make $2,000 and $3,000. Here it is, the last years. Dunkin' Donuts coming here. Now I'm making a lot of money now. You know what I mean? But I only got 2 more years to do it. So.
It was only 2 years after that?
Well, yeah, it took about a year. I think it took about a year for them to do all. We were still in operation. Took about a year for the assessment and all that. It took less than that. But by the time the contracting officer went out and solicited and all of that, it took about a year. So by that time we were down to about 4. Then they had to come in and build what they needed to build. So we were into time. I don't remember exactly.
Still worth it. Oh. Well, something better than just.
I got one piece I'm gonna put into the closing, which is this, and everything else is done.
Do we have to repeat the ending of that?
I don't know where you left off.
I tried to remember
It was
just now.
like 2 more years after it took all that.
Yeah,
And
yeah. I was in 2 more. I think I can get it from there. I think that's what I said. It was about 2
Great,
more
if you
years.
want to do that and then go into your.
Okay.
Yeah,
Tell me when.
rolling, so.
Okay. All right. So basically, we were able to get the contracts up and running, and it finished out somewhere between 2 and 3 years. So we did very well. So we were able to close out. The contractors actually, I'm quite sure they were upset because it was a good business and whatever. But one of the things I did want to mention to you too is that because we were talking a lot, I actually had an opportunity to sit at the table when we were talking in the community gatherings. I was sitting at the table with the people that worked at Walter Reed, but I could have sat at the table with the people that actually lived in the community because I have all the things that I'm involved in terms of that. But one of the things, this is a book that a gentleman put together who came out of Coolidge he graduated from Coolidge in 1944. He graduated in Coolidge in 1944. And this book has, I don't even know all the people because everybody are so humble, you don't know. But I can tell you this. There's 3 people in here that I do know that are very renowned. And one of them is, I don't know if you have ever heard of Bowie Kuhn. Bowie Kuhn is the Hall of Fame. He used to be the Major League Baseball commissioner, Hall of Famer. He's the one that turned baseball around. He went to Roosevelt High School. Then you have another guy in here by the name of Bergman, and I don't know his first name, but if you lived in this city for a long time, the cleanest that was one of the largest cleaners in this area was Bergman's. Bergman's went to Coolidge. He went to Coolidge. He went to Paul Junior High School, then he went to Coolidge. And then the last person I'm going to mention, we actually honored him about 5 years ago. His name is Sid Kramer. Sid Kramer is one of the only, he might not be the only one now. He's 95 years old now. He's still alive. Sid Kramer was a construction guy. He built a lot of buildings and stuff. But basically, if you Google him, they list him as the American politician. He's the only one in the state of Maryland, at least he was at one time, that served at every level. He served as city council. He served as the 3rd Montgomery County executive government. He served as the 3rd one, and then he served as a state senator. So he served in those 3 capacities. And I think his son right now is actually a senator now in the state of Maryland. So, I thought I wanted to mention that because there's probably other people in here that's just some major stuff in terms of community that a lot of people wouldn't know because most of these people, they're in their 90s or they're dead now, But this community has really been a strong community in terms of, Washington, D.C., just period, has a lot of people that have done some tremendous things around this country.
Well, I think we can we've talked long enough and covered everything, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
And so I'd like to thank you so much for sitting here, being interviewed and contributing all this information and all these stories.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it, and I enjoyed the time.